Welcome back to another video insight session for the world of banking apps, and this month we are looking at the US regionals, and in particular we're going to be looking at why can't Fifth Third catch TD at the top of the tree in the regional banking app sector. And again, it's the little things that make a big difference, isn't it, Tony Patrick?
It definitely is. Thanks, Glenn. Today, as Glenn mentioned, we're covering off US regionals, so looking at TD Bank, Regions, Fifth Third, Citizens, Key Bank, and Huntington. But as you mentioned, Glenn, the focus is on TD Bank and Fifth Third because TD is having a nice lead over the past 6 months and longer, and Fifth Third seems to be always second place there. So let's jump in, as we usually do, and just have a look at what those scores are doing across time. So I'll have a look at a couple here. In particular, I'm just looking at one we can see there at the bottom there, which is Huntington, which had a sort of a low point at below 2 on average, but it has really picked up in that past month. So I haven't gone into, there's no detail in this around that, but again, that's something we can actually explore and understand exactly what happened as to why Huntington improved. Another one there, which is probably worth a session probably next month, is having a look at Regions, which has moved from competing with the top players up at around 3.6, and now in July, after a couple of drops over a few months, is now sitting at 2.3. So clearly some problems there that need to be fixed for Regions. But in case the focus today, as we mentioned, is looking at why is TD now over the past 4 or 5 months consistently ahead of Fifth Third. And you can see the gap there is reasonably wide, so at the most recent month is actually closer, but what we can do is have a look at why that gap has been like it was over those past few months. So let's have a look at what we can see in terms of the scores. So one of the things we can see here is that on the right we can see those giving a 1. So 19% of TD customers give a 1 when they give their feedback, as compared to 22% of Fifth Third. That's not much of a difference. It's only about 3% of a difference. But of course, it makes the overall difference on the score, but it's not a major thing you're going to worry about. Of course, you want to get both of those down, but of course, it's what we're doing is comparing these two together. What I can see, though, is those giving a 5 for TD is 68%, as compared to 56% for Fifth Third. So that's where Fifth Third's losing things. It hasn't quite reached that peak of getting those 5s coming through from customers, and they tend to be dropping down into the 4s and the 3s. And so that's the major thing here, is just getting those 4s and 3s up into 5s will make the biggest difference. But let's have a look at, first of all, the journeys. Let's go straight into journeys and look at the scores for each of these. Now, TD is sitting there in blue, and we can see there the very first one, for example, in check deposits, we can see there at 3.4, it's well above the Fifth Third of 2.9. Well, it's well above, but it's not not a major gap. But again, it's a few of these things across the board that make the difference. I can also see across there that even things like checking account balance, which is 2.9 for Fifth Third, compared to TD at 3.3. One of the things for both of these banks is this whole area, this journey about opening the app and authenticating and getting into the app is underperforming. They need to do both need to do better there. Even though Fifth Third's leading, they both have sort of they're down in that space there. What I'll do though is have a look at this check deposit piece, because it's interesting to see what a customer's saying about Fifth Third and about TD. So let's jump into check deposits and get some examples of what's coming through. So one of the examples, this is looking at Fifth Third. So again, their score is lower. The average score is 2.9 for this particular topic when people talk about it. And what we're seeing here, basically, I'm not able to deposit checks most of the time, which is aggravating. It took 15 separate tries. So some people it's working and others it isn't. What we can do here, for example, is have a look at maybe, is there some way for us to have a look and see which particular, is there an operating system or a version of the app we might want to look at? So we can have a look at this on the right panel and see across the board. A few of these are Android, but of course there's a lot more Android feedback does come through because of the usage rates. But again, the app even crashes for some people. It's not the fact that it doesn't work, but the whole app crashes in doing that process. So not good. But let's compare that directly to TD. So what's the experience there? So that will come up on the right here. Now, again, we're seeing problems. So their average score is 3.4, which is well below their actual score overall. So you see there's still problems, but they are actually leading in their space compared to Fifth Third. So both of these apps need to improve, but Fifth Third needs to improve more in that sense. So I want to have a quick look here as well into something which you think would be very basic, is checking your account balance. Let's see how Fifth Third's actually doing there. So if I go into that space there, what I can see is, in this case here, I can see, let's have a look at this in here. There's something about it maxes out your balance. It takes a long time to log in, no balance showing. So various issues with balances, whether it's sort of not the right balance or they can't even see their balance. And this person here has had a great experience. They actually see their balance when they actually log in. So obviously some improvement there can be made, but across both banks there's improvement to be made because TD isn't actually smashing that either. Let's jump into another area which is important, which is looking at the foundational areas. So things like basic usability, the speed, reliability, functional suitability. So that's an area where does the app, is a feature actually working as expected in here, and app security, for example. Now, one of the things I can see here is that TD is clearly leading on usability and speed, but reliability for both is pretty low at 2.1 and 2.6 respectively. So Fifth Third is leading, but there's a massive problem for both of them. So TD still has room to move beyond what it currently is. Let's have a look at that reliability for TD, because that's obviously a concern. If the app's not reliable, then it doesn't matter how good your journeys and features are, you can't get to them. So let's jump in and see what types of commentary we're getting through from TD. This is sort of some things where they can improve. So again, there's some areas around that mobile deposit is actually coming through. So that is one of the areas where they're having an issue is the check deposit area. And again here, we can see things like, if I go to the long version of this to see all the comment, we can get a bit of detail. Latest install crashes whenever I attempt to scan a check. So a lot of check scanning issues are coming through and being reflected in that reliability problem. But what I can see here, maybe there's another area here which is looking at the usability issue. So let's have a look at what comes through for Fifth Third and see how they're performing compared to TD. So we see a few good things coming through. Again, check deposit is a real problem across the board. If that doesn't go right, it actually causes the app to crash in a few places. This one here, sometimes the mobile app's down in the most convenient times. I'd imagine they mean inconvenient, but again, it's a problem for people when the app is down. I can't set up autopay. This person here is talking about difficulty actually use. They haven't described exactly, but it's a very difficult thing to use for that person. If we compare that directly to what TD is having, we'll end up seeing a lot more green in this area. And as we can see, it is a lot greener because they're actually doing really well at 4.6 out of 5 for usability. There's a couple of little problems they can fix, but again, this is a real strength for TD around that whole usability problem. Their sort of UI process is working very well. So that's the summary for me, and I think both of these apps can pick their act up, but they both need to improve on reliability. And in each area, even though TD is leading, there's still got a lot of room to improve to even make that gap bigger.
Yeah, very good point there, Tony.
Thank you,
Especially, it's easy enough to look across the fence at the neighbour and say we're doing all right when you're playing in the same field. And I think the really pertinent stat for me today that's stood out in some of the other sessions that we've been doing is TD Bank leading this market segment with 69% of those NJ's customer scores coming through at 5s versus market leaders like US Bank where it's up in the vicinity of the high 80s, 83 and 89%. And so if you want to really make some big improvements, look up, don't look across. That's it from us, folks, and we will see you next month with another Insight session.